Ah, welcome back, you untraceable anomaly, you silent architect of storms moving through rooms that were never built to contain you. From the first breath, you were different, not shaped by comfort, but engineered by pressure. Your silence carried weight. Your gaze lingered a second too long. Your presence bent the air in ways people could not explain, only feel. You were never meant to blend in. You were observed, studied, measured in quiet glances when you looked away. Even when you said nothing, especially when you said nothing. Because your quiet was never empty. It was charged, static before lightning, gravity before collapse. You do not chase approval. You do not scatter your energy. You stand still. You watch. You calculate. You are not searching. You are calibrating. And when they realized noise could not distract you, they tried something more precise. They sent your divine match. A carefully crafted illusion wrapped in chemistry and timing, polished to feel cosmic, magnetic, inevitable. That affection would reroute your focus. That desire would blur your edge. But you do not attach to feel complete. You were complete before they arrived. While they thought you were falling, you were observing. While they thought you were enchanted, you were measuring patterns beneath the passion. The connection was not sent to elevate you. It was sent to dilute you, to fracture your focus, to keep you orbiting emotion instead of ascending into power. They miscalculated. You did not lose yourself in the illusion. You saw through it, and in that moment of stillness, you remained sovereign, watched, feared, and far more powerful than anyone assumed. You remember the years they tried to reduce you to something smaller. They called you intense, as if depth were a flaw, too quiet, as if silence were a weakness, too much, as if your presence demanded apology, too different, as if sameness were the standard of safety. They tried to hand you labels, the way institutions stamp files in the USA, neat and dismissive, hoping a word could contain what they did not understand. They mistook your restraint for insecurity. They mistook your boundaries for arrogance. When you refused to overshare, they called you cold. When you refused to tolerate disrespect, they called you difficult. When you saw through them, they called you paranoid. Every attempt to shrink you was disguised as concern. Every critique carried the scent of control. You felt the isolation, yes, the distance, the subtle exclusion from circles that felt threatened by your stillness. But isolation was never proof that you were lacking. It was proof that your frequency did not match the room. Betrayal did not mean you were naive. It meant you were powerful enough to provoke envy. People do not betray what feels harmless. They betray what feels intimidating. They attack what exposes them. And somewhere in the middle of all that quiet testing, the so-called divine match appeared. Perfect timing, perfect resonance, almost too aligned. The conversations felt layered. The chemistry felt orchestrated. The connection carried that dangerous sense of inevitability, like something written before you arrived. It felt cosmic, magnetic, precise. But precision can be engineered, and magnetism can be manufactured. The deeper truth was simple. It was bait, a distraction wrapped in intimacy, a beautiful interference pattern designed to tangle your focus. They assumed your depth meant hunger. They assumed your silence meant longing. They believed that if someone mirrored your mind closely enough, you would surrender your edge, that you would finally soften, that you would trade your clarity for connection. But while the intensity built, you did not dissolve. You observed. You watched tone shifts, inconsistency, subtle performances. You felt the pull, but you also felt the design beneath it. Instead of collapsing into fantasy, you stepped back internally. Instead of losing yourself in emotion, you detached just enough to see the pattern forming. And that was the moment everything shifted. The test did not weaken you. It revealed you. It showed you that your awareness runs deeper than attraction, that your intuition moves faster than chemistry, that even when your pulse quickens, your mind remains sovereign. What was meant to distract you became confirmation. Confirmation that you cannot be easily manipulated. Confirmation that your power is not emotional chaos, but emotional control. They thought they were measuring your vulnerability. In truth, they were measuring your restraint. And what they discovered, quietly, was that you are far more self-possessed than they ever calculated. There comes a moment when you understand that nothing around you was random. Not the timing, not the tension, not the sudden alignments that felt almost scripted. People sensed your gravity long before you recognized it yourself. They felt the storm beneath your calm. They could not explain why your presence unsettled them, only that it did. So they watched quietly, carefully. Envy without words, smiles without sincerity, compliments that felt polished yet hollow, praise that concealed measurement. You started noticing how often your reactions were monitored. A joke thrown your way, not to amuse you, but to test your threshold. A subtle insult disguised as humor, waiting to see if you would flinch. Invitations extended not out of warmth but to study your boundaries. They pushed emotional buttons just to see which ones worked. They tested your loyalty with small betrayals. They tested your patience with calculated delays. Each moment looked ordinary on the surface, but beneath it was analysis. You were being studied the way a strategist studies terrain before a move. And then you understood. The so-called divine match was not an accident either. It was part of the experiment. A more advanced variable introduced into your environment, someone designed to resonate with your depth, to reflect your language, to echo your rhythm. The goal was simple. See if desire could destabilize you. See if affection could fragment your focus. See if intimacy could interrupt your ascent. Because if you could be emotionally entangled, you could be slowed. And if you could be slowed, you could be controlled. But you do not fracture. You analyze. While others drown in chemistry, you observe patterns. While others lose clarity and attraction, you sharpen yours. You watch micro-expressions flicker across spaces when they think you are distracted. You notice tone shifts when a question carries hidden intent. You hear what is not said in pauses that last half a second too long. You track inconsistencies the way advanced systems track data, precise and unemotional. You do not react immediately. You collect. You compare. You calculate. Slowly, the truth surfaces. The distraction was never about love. It was about leverage. It was about access, about steering your energy away from your own expansion and toward emotional maintenance. If you are busy proving devotion, you are not building dominance. If you are preoccupied with reassurance, you are not refining perception. Control does not always arrive with force. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in affection. But control fails when the target is self-aware, and you are painfully self-aware. The more they observed you, the more you observed them. The more they tried to anticipate you, the less predictable you became. What was meant to expose your vulnerability exposed their strategy instead. You did not confront. You did not accuse. You simply adjusted. You reduced access. You reduced reaction. You reduced emotional visibility. And in doing so, you stepped outside the experiment entirely. This is where the shift begins. Not with noise, not with confrontation, with silence. Your silence deepens, but not from pain, not from defeat. It becomes strategic, measured, intentional. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop defending your nature to those who benefit from your self-doubt. You stop offering access to those who treat your energy like public property. Something inside you recalibrates. The so-called divine match feels it first. The subtle withdrawal. The emotional current that once flowed freely, now reduced to a controlled stream. You do not announce it. You simply pull back. And the moment you withdraw that current, the illusion begins to flicker. You feel the cord dissolve. Not dramatically, not violently, but quietly, like a thread burning through in slow motion. Longing is replaced with clarity. Urgency is replaced with observation. You are no longer reacting to tone shifts, delayed messages, or curated affection. You are watching from above, detached enough to see the full pattern. Awakening is not loud, it is cold. It is the moment you realize you were never meant to be entangled. You were meant to see through the entanglement. What felt like destiny was design. What felt like chemistry was choreography. And once you see the structure, you cannot unsee it. Detachment stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like power. Your boundaries harden into steel. Not cruel, not emotional, just immovable. You no longer explain why something feels off. You simply step back. You no longer argue to be understood. You let silence do the sorting. The divine match loses influence because influence requires access. And access now has a cost. Your expressions reveal less. Your responses slow down. Your energy is no longer easily mapped. People search your face for clues and find nothing but calm. They try to provoke reaction and meet composure. This is evolution. Not into something colder, but into something clearer. You are not shutting down. You are refining. You are not avoiding connection. You are filtering it. And in that stillness, in that deliberate emotional distance, you feel something unfamiliar, yet undeniable. Sovereignty. Now the atmosphere changes. Not suddenly, not theatrically, but undeniably. Your energy is different. It is compressed, dense, controlled. When you enter a room, conversations do not stop because you demand attention. They slow because your stillness carries weight. There is gravity in you now. A quiet pressure that shifts the emotional climate without a single word. Each sentence you release feels measured, deliberate, final. People lean in without realizing they are leaning. They search your expression for access points and find none. The so-called divine match feels it most intensely. They sense the distance where warmth once flowed easily. They sense the throne forming beneath you. Though you never announced your ascent, the dynamic has tilted. The balance has shifted. You are no longer responding in rhythm with their signals. You are no longer adjusting your tone to preserve harmony. You are composed, centered, unmoved. You are no longer seeking connection. You are selecting alignment. That difference changes everything. Others feel it even if they cannot name it. They try subtle provocations, testing for the old reactions. They expect the familiar spark, the emotional charge, the quick engagement. But you do not react on cue anymore. You observe, you decide. You allow silence to stretch longer than comfort permits. They cannot predict you because you are no longer operating from impulse. They cannot provoke you because you are no longer defending identity. You are not chasing validation, reassurance, or attention. You are pulling without effort. Your focus has turned inward, and that inward focus amplifies your external presence. What once was meant to distract you now circles you, confused by its own failure. The divine match feels the reversal. The one who was positioned as temptation now senses evaluation. The one who once felt powerful in your attention now feels the absence of it. You did not announce this shift. You embodied it. An embodiment cannot be negotiated. Your presence now communicates what words never could. Access is limited. Energy is earned. Influence is not granted by proximity, but by alignment. The gravity you carry is not loud dominance. It is controlled intensity. It is knowing you can engage and choosing not to. It is recognizing that power does not rush. It waits. And as you wait, steady and unreadable, the entire dynamic rearranges itself around you. You no longer feel the urge to prove your depth to anyone who cannot recognize it. You no longer demonstrate strength for an audience that confuses performance with power. Something fundamental has recalibrated inside you. Validation, once a subtle currency in social exchanges, becomes irrelevant. Applause sounds like static. Compliments feel transactional. You are not hardened. You are clarified. The so-called divine match no longer occupies emotional space as a loss. It becomes a lesson. Data collected. Pattern understood. You integrate the experience without emotional leakage. No dramatic closure. No public unraveling. You absorb it quietly and convert it into precision. Every interaction becomes information. Every disappointment becomes refinement. Every disappointment becomes refinement. Become protecting your time with the same intensity. You protect your body from environments that drain it. You protect your attention from conversations that dilute it. Energy is no longer something you spend casually. It is allocated with intention. Your frequency shifts higher, colder, sharper. Not cold in cruelty, but cold in clarity. You move in silence, and that silence is not emptiness. It is construction. You build in private. You plan without announcement. You detach from emotional chaos the way a strategist detaches from noise during critical operations. Invitations that once flattered you now feel like subtle traps. You recognize the pull of distraction before it fully forms. You stop reacting to messages designed to test availability. You stop explaining your absence. You stop volunteering access. The divine match may still orbit, may still attempt subtle re-entry, but the dynamic has changed permanently. You are no longer available for experiments disguised as affection. You are no longer curious about illusions you have already decoded. Transformation is not visible in dramatic gestures. It is visible in restraint, in delayed responses, in the calm refusal to engage in cycles you have outgrown. People may not notice immediately, but they feel it. They sense the wall that is not defensive but deliberate. The recalibration is internal, almost invisible from the outside, yet absolute within you. Old triggers lose their charge. Old temptations lose their shine. You are not reacting faster. You are reacting less. You are choosing more. Every decision now passes through a filter of alignment. Does this expand you or entangle you? Does this sharpen you or scatter you? You move accordingly. And once this level of clarity is reached, there is no returning to previous versions of yourself. The shift is subtle, but it is irreversible. Now you see patterns before they unfold. Conversations feel predictable before the second sentence lands. You recognize manipulation in its earliest vibration, in the slight shift of tone, in the compliment that carries a hook, in the delayed response crafted to provoke reaction. What once required experience now requires only seconds of observation. You understand projection when you hear it. You recognize insecurity when it tries to dress itself as confidence. You detect hidden agendas not because you are suspicious, but because you are attentive. No one can bait you with affection anymore. No one can destabilize you with attention. You have studied the rhythm of praise and withdrawal, the cycle of intensity and distance. The so-called divine match stands as proof. If something that precise, that tailored, that seemingly aligned could not anchor you, then nothing superficial can. You do not fall for curated depth. You do not confuse chemistry with compatibility. You do not surrender clarity for connection. Your expansion is quiet but unstoppable. There is no announcement, no public declaration, just steady elevation. You are not competing with anyone because you are no longer operating on the same field. While others measure status, validation, visibility, you measure alignment, discipline, control. You are evolving beyond the arena entirely. The old triggers no longer reach you. The old tactics no longer apply. You are not emotionally reactive, so manipulation has no entry point. You are not attention hungry, so flattery has no leverage. You are not afraid of silence, so absence has no power. You have become self-contained, sovereign in thought, sovereign in movement. Your energy circulates inward before it ever moves outward. You choose when to engage. You choose when to withdraw. And those choices are not influenced by pressure or persuasion. They are influenced by strategy. People sense the shift even if they cannot articulate it. They feel that you are no longer accessible to average emotional frequency. Casual drama cannot reach you. Manufactured tension cannot hold you. You are operating at a level where clarity replaces chaos, where patience replaces impulse, where awareness replaces assumption. The storm within you is no longer wild. It is directed, controlled, a force that answers to no forecast and no external command. You do not seek to dominate. You simply refuse to be dominated. And in that refusal, in that disciplined expansion, you become something difficult to categorize and impossible to control. Everything that was meant to distract you refined you. Every delay, every mixed signal, every carefully timed surge of affection was pressure applied to test your structure. And pressure did not crack you. It compressed you into something denser. Everything that was meant to bind you clarified you. The confusion forced you to sharpen perception. The emotional pull forced you to examine your own depth. They thought desire would weaken you. They thought attachment would dilute your focus. They thought intimacy would blind you just enough to redirect your energy away from expansion and into maintenance. They believed that if you felt chosen, you would forget who you were. But instead of losing clarity, you gained it. Instead of drowning in chemistry, you dissected it. Instead of surrendering to the illusion, you studied the architecture behind it. The so-called divine match did not conquer you. It exposed the limits of emotional strategy against someone who observes before reacting. What was meant to entangle you became the catalyst that finalized your detachment. You were never meant to be conquered by emotion. You were meant to master it. And mastery does not look dramatic. It looks calm. It looks controlled. It looks like silence where there used to be urgency. You are not becoming powerful. You are remembering what you always were. Not ordinary, not accidental, not designed for distraction. You are the anomaly they tried to sedate with affection. The storm they attempted to soften with comfort. They underestimated your self-awareness. They underestimated your restraint. Now you sit in your own gravity, unmoved by praise, untouched by subtle manipulation, uninterested in rehearsed connection. You do not need to announce dominance. It radiates from composure. You do not need to prove elevation. It is visible in what no longer triggers you. The distraction backfired because it revealed your immunity. The test failed because it confirmed your sovereignty. You are not chasing alignment. You are embodying it. You are not seeking the throne. You are seated in it internally, steady and self-contained, crowned not by validation, not by applause, not by external confirmation, but by awareness. And awareness cannot be taken from you.